So Christmas is 2 days away, and I felt like I had to say something about Christmas today. And I've actually been thinking a lot about it in the last week or so, thinking about my childhood and how, for me, Christmas was the best day of the year. And one reason for that was the excitement, getting new stuff, toys and clothes, and maybe even a new bicycle, and then lots of yummy things to eat. So now, with my Buddhist understanding and practice, I can see clearly that that kind of happiness, that kind of pleasure is very transitory. I can even remember by 3 o'clock on Christmas afternoon, you've already opened all your packages and played with your toys and you're bored, like, oh, what's next? But I can also remember other forms of happiness that were more kind of genuine. There just seemed to be a lot more joy in the air. Even my father, who tended to be rather depressive and gloomy much of the time, he looked happy, and everybody looked happy. And there were a lot more expressions of love and affection and caring, and of course, giving gifts. I think my parents were really happy to be able to give things to their kids and see our joy, our delight, and also beauty. I love Christmas trees. I'm really attached to Christmas trees. Having a Christmas tree in the house, the odor of the pine would pervade the house, and then the beautiful colored lights and the shiny ornaments and tinsel and so on. It's like this is like the darkest, coldest time of the year, and it was just so beautiful to have these Christmas trees and then Christmas decorations on the houses and so on, and Christmas carols. Really beautiful songs of joy and love and giving and adoration of Jesus and so on. So it was really nice to be able to get together and sing those songs and sometimes walk around the neighborhood and offer them to our neighbors. And then, of course, going to church. My family was Catholic, so it was a religious event. We would go to church, and the church was beautiful, lots of flowers and candles and very beautiful songs and sermons and so on. So I have a lot of good memories of Christmas in the past. But now the question is, we're Buddhists. We're not Christians. So how do we as Buddhists relate to Christmas? And I'm sure that's a question that some people wonder about. And in fact, I once heard a teacher, he was an Asian teacher, and he said, oh, as Buddhists, we shouldn't celebrate Christmas. And I was kind of shocked when I heard that. It made me feel sad as well. And looking back, I can understand probably where he's coming from. He grew up in an Asian country where probably the majority of people were Buddhist, maybe a few Christians, but Christmas wasn't a big deal for him and his family and so on. And also perhaps he was concerned about making clear, the difference between different religions and not mixing them all up and making a soup. So maybe that's where he was coming from. But I also feel I can disagree with him. And I do disagree with him for several reasons. One reason is that, out of all the religions in the world, Christianity is the greatest in terms of numbers. I looked up the numbers this morning, and as of the last census, which was 5 years ago, more than 31% of the people on this planet are Christians, which means 2.2 billion people, compared to Buddhists, who make up 7% of the world population, about 500 million people. So that means the majority of people on this planet who belong to any kind of religion at all are Christians. So it just doesn't seem right to ignore an occasion that is so important, so meaningful for our fellow human beings. And also many of us were raised in Christian families of some denomination or another. And that may have shaped a very, big part of our mind and our experiences, not necessarily in a beneficial way, but I mean, my own experience, my family was Catholic, and we went to Catholic school, so I really had quite a bit of learning of Christianity. And I went through a period when I was especially about 13 or 14 where I really rejected it all and I was really angry about it all and so on. But then when I started studying Buddhism, looking back, I really appreciated a lot of what I had learned and appreciated the fact that I had, been raised in a religion, because I knew many people who are not. So just to have that basis of ethics and kindness and compassion, in the early part of my childhood. And then many of my teachers also show a great deal of respect for Jesus and for Christianity. I've heard some teachers, when they hear, Tibetan teachers hear about Jesus and his teachings and his life, they say, it sounds like a bodhisattva. It's quite possible. Pretty amazing being. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, we should respect all religions for the good that they do. Because every religion fills a need in human beings. Need for spirituality, need for believing in something more than just this material world. And they teach people how to live a good life, how to be ethical, kind, giving, unselfish, and so on and so forth. And one thing he says, which is very helpful, he says that the difference between respect and belief, we can respect the religions of the world, other people's religions. That doesn't mean we have to believe in what they teach. So he says that's what he does. He respects all religions and all religious people, even though he doesn't believe in at least some or many of their doctrines. And I feel it's really genuine. I have seen him myself with people of other religions. And amazing respect and appreciation. And there's also a beautiful story. He was once at Gethsemane, the monastery of Thomas Merton, Trappist monastery in Kentucky. They were having some kind of interfaith meeting. And after the conclusion of one session, everybody filed out of the hall to go to the dining room, I suppose. And outside the hall was a statue of Mary, the mother of Jesus. And he stopped in front of the statue and put his hands together and just stayed like that for several minutes in prayer and just really showing deep, deep respect for, Mary, mother of Jesus. So, it seems it's genuine respect. And also my own experience, especially with Lama Yeshe, because he knew many of his students, Western students, for us, Christmas was a big deal. And at Kopan Monastery, where everything started with him and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, there would usually be a lot of Westerners at Kopan Monastery in December, because they would have this 1-month course in November where a few hundred people would come, and many of the people would stay on afterwards and do a Lamrim retreat during December. So at Christmas time, there was a lot of Western people there. And Lama Yeshe would usually give talks, about Christmas and the real meaning of Christmas, and then we'd have some kind of nice celebration on Christmas Day. So that's kind of a tradition Lama Yeshe started and has continued in the FPMT centers. So in my experience, when I've been in an FPMT center at Christmas time, we do some practice related to loving kindness and compassion, like Chenrezig practice in the morning, just to remember the real meaning of this day of the birth of Jesus, and then have a fancy lunch. And here at the Abbey, Sravasti Abbey, there's the tradition of reading Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, or engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds, which is really very meaningful, because that book, that text, is all about how to develop compassion and love and bodhicitta, and then dedicate your whole life to the benefit of others. So it's really a very meaningful thing to do on Christmas Day. So I just wanted to read a couple of things that Lama Yeshe said, because the talks that he gave in those early days at Kopan were, edited and made into a little book called Silent Mind, Holy Mind, which was published back in the 70s. And I was reading it this morning. There's some really lovely things. So first he talks about how, some people, even though Christmas is a religious holiday, but some people treat it in a very materialistic way, and get all caught up in buying presents, and then the attitudes they have are not necessarily genuine giving, but, oh, I better give that person a nice gift so they'll give me a nice gift in return, or I better give a gift to that person because otherwise they won't like me. So obviously the 8 worldly dharmas can creep into our attitudes about giving gifts. So he said we should, stay away from that kind of activity. And and he talks about the real meaning of Christmas. So he says, when we look deeply with penetrative wisdom into such things as our attitudes and behavior at Christmas, we are truly practicing Dharma. This is the true religious pursuit. Dharma study does not mean thinking about something coming out of the sky from another world. It deals directly with such questions as our motivation, what we are thinking and feeling right now in the midst of our everyday life. If we do not make an attempt to control and transform the negative, confused minds of jealousy, greed, and so forth, then there is no such thing as Christianity. There's no Buddhism, no Mahayana, nothing worthwhile at all. We must recognize the negative mind for what it is, and then slowly begin to find a solution for the pain it causes ourselves and others. In this way, our mind can be brought to a state of everlasting, peaceful realization. If we do nothing to correct our motivation and distorted ways of thinking, then Christmas exists merely for the ego. Although we are supposedly making a celebration for Jesus, what we are actually doing is completely degenerate. Therefore, if you want to come to this Christmas celebration and bring a present, the best present you can bring is a peaceful mind. If you can make such an offering with true love for one another, that is enough. There's no need for too much physical preparation and activity. And just one more thing. This was on another occasion. He says, therefore, if our Christmas celebration is to be truly religious, it is important to remember who Jesus was, what he did, and what he stood for. In this way, we can understand how he benefited so many beings and why he has been such a positive force, not merely in his own time, but throughout the past 2,000 years and up to the present day. Jesus had exceptionally great compassion. It is very good to check up on this fact and to consider it deeply. If the thought comes to our mind, I must gain his realizations and become a compassionate person as he was, then this is the most perfect basis on which to have a celebration of his birth. With this feeling in our hearts, a Christmas festival can be very meaningful and worthwhile. So I wish all of you to have a wonderful Christmas with a good heart, a heart full of genuine compassion, loving kindness, and joy.